Okay. I want to talk a little finance here for a moment. So I have some questions about what is happening and what is going on out there. And so I wanted to seek the input of someone who knows about this stuff better than I, which is pretty much anyone. So Andy Schectman is the proprietor of Miles Franklin. You all know about that. Send an email to info@milesfranklin.com. They'll send you the spot sheet on how much you could buy gold, silver, copper, and palladium, and your other precious metals from. Yes, they do the silver IRAs and all the other products as well. Over $10 billion in sales. Andy's been at it since the 1990s. He knows a little bit about this. And he's on the Dude Maker hotline. Brother Andy, how are you?
I'm good, Mike. How are you, my man?
So I am well. Tell our audience what you were doing up in Canada, because you were up in Canada for
speaking at a conference, and 5 days at a conference. It was exhausting but exhilarating. We are seeing a reawakening of interest in precious metals after, I don't know, good 6 or 7 months of risk on and Trump euphoria in regards to investing. And certainly now we see that. I've never seen a shift from risk on to risk off quite as fast, with the hedge funds having the lowest exposure to the Mag 7 in 2 years, and the insiders seemingly exiting stage left as quickly as possible. Buffett with nearly $400 billion in cash, Jamie Dimon, Bill, all of the big money in equities seem to be selling 6-to-1 insider selling versus buying. All of a sudden, there's that risk off awareness that seems to be permeating through the air. So it was a good time.
So I'm just curious here. Did you see anything like this? Like, for example, when Obama became president in 2009, because weren't people tearing? You were going through all the TARP and the bailouts and all that. Was there any move like that in 2009?
There was, through this community, through the hard asset community. But what's different this time, unlike anything I've ever seen, ever, and I say that, please understand that this is so far removed from anything I've ever seen in 35 years of doing this. The United States, since November, has become a net importer of gold and silver. They have never been that in my career. And you have a mountain of gold and silver that is being delivered into New York from London and adding tremendous instability to the London metals market. In the last 3 months, 130 million ounces of silver have been delivered into the New York vaults, almost all of it coming from London. That is 1/3 of all the available, almost a half. Actually, it's about 44% of all the silver held in London has been delivered over the last 3 months, and somewhere close to 65 million ounces of gold over the last 3 months, or certainly since November, since the United States has become a net importer. Something very big and significant is happening with gold, and let's not forget that the most powerful bank in the world, Mike, the Bank of International Settlements, did reclassify gold in 2019 as the world's only other Tier 1 reserve asset next to U.S. Treasuries. And so we are seeing the central banks, net, since 2014, there hasn't been one new Treasury purchased by a central bank. The selling has outnumbered the buying, much of it going into things like gold, the only other Tier 1 asset, which has no counterparty risk, can't be sanctioned, no inflation risk, no default risk. And if you look at last year's performance with gold up 40% and the 10-year Treasury up 4.5%, you can understand this shift by the most knowledgeable and informed traders in the world. And forget about the fact that they're the wealthiest, they're the most well-informed. Something significant, Mike, more so than anything I've ever seen, is happening in the gold market right now.
Okay, so I meant to send this to you earlier because you would understand it more than I would, but I'm just going to walk you through because I know this is in your wheelhouse. So there's a guy I follow on Twitter. It's called the Kobayashi letter. And
Yep, they're good.
Okay, so maybe you saw this then. President Trump, it's very clear what's happening here. He said, because you say something big. I saved this for you, Andy. I've had it in my bookmark for like 10 days. I'm going to wait till I get Andy Schectman on, and I'm going to ask him about this. President Trump now believes, that Kobayashi says, Trump now believes short-term pain is his only option to lower inflation and refinance $9+ trillion of U.S. debt. We have seen over minus $5 trillion erased from U.S. stocks with the goal of lowering rates. Will it work? And then this is the thread that he has. And he says, based on our research, Trump made this conclusion before inauguration. However, he began formally articulating it on March the 6th. Below is a headline that destroyed investor confidence in 2025, and it's a CNBC headline. Trump says he's not even looking at stock market. Tariffs will make U.S. very strong. On March the 9th, Trump further confirmed this shift in mentality. He acknowledged we are in a period of transition, and it will take a little time. Do you know what we are transitioning to?
Well, first
if you
of
had
all,
to guess, and you're not in the guessing game. So.
Well, I mean, look, all of this, whatever's going on with gold and silver, some people say it's tariffs. Some people say it's the Basel III reclassification that goes into effect in the United States here July 1st, where the banks have to have allocated gold versus unallocated paper gold. Some say it's taking advantage of this spread, if you will, this arbitrage between gold priced much higher in New York for delivery than is being offered in London. I'll explain that in a second, but it's been as high as $80 where there's an arbitrage. But when you send it back, the cost of that doing so greatly reduces the benefit. I don't think it's any of it. Look, gold is held in every central bank balance sheet in the West in an account called the gold revaluation account. That's the name of it. Can't make it up. We've had the head of the Dutch National Bank for 2 years screaming gold should be revalued. In Europe, it's all held at 35 an ounce on the balance sheet, the old Bretton Woods price. In the U.S., it's 42.22 because Nixon, when he closed the gold window in 71, he revalued gold from 35 to 38 in 72 and from 38 to 42.22 in 73, where it stayed on the books. We've had the members of the German Bundesbank. We need to revalue gold to offset our liabilities on our balance sheet. And even Senator Cynthia Loomis from Wyoming, in advocating for the strategic Bitcoin account, we need to revalue gold. Judy Shelton, Trump's nominee for the Fed in 2016, who, due to partisan politics, wasn't confirmed, I just interviewed her. She says that her whole premise is to issue 50-year treasuries backed by gold and deliverable in gold. And she told me flat out that she believes Trump will issue them, as per her conversations with him, July 4th of 2026, the 250th year anniversary. Many people think she'll take over for Powell when his tenure expires next year. The bottom line is simply this. Could gold be revalued? Every $4,000 increase in the price of gold would add $3 trillion free and clear to the Treasury General account. Whatever is happening is so far outside the realm of what has been happening, I would simply say this. He could instruct Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, to tell Jerome Powell to revalue gold to $12,000 an ounce. And that would be a 40%. If you take the largest, broadest measure of the money supply, take 40% of it. 40% backing is what the U.S. used to be, gold backing. That's what the Swiss used to be. And the BRICS just came out and said, we've agreed in principle to a new settlement currency called the unit, which is 40% gold-backed, deliverable to central banks on demand. That 40% number resonates. And so if you take the broadest measure of our money supply, take 40% of it, divide it into the gold holdings that we haven't audited since 53, you come up with $12,000 an ounce. Wow. He could do that without congressional approval. That would give the Treasury General account $3 trillion free and clear to do with as they please. Could it be that they are onshoring, reshoring all of this gold, becoming net importers of the only other Tier 1 asset? And now J.P. Morgan, who has been the custodian of SLV, the largest silver trust in the world, who, by the way, paid a $920 million fine for manipulating the metals market a few years ago and was still allowed to be the custodian of SLV, just took over primary custodianship of GLD, the third or fourth largest stockpile of gold in the world. Could this be bigger than we think? Could all of this gold be coming back to inspire confidence, as Judy Shelton says, in the Treasury market, which will then be collared and redeemable in gold? I don't know, but I will tell you whatever is happening to me is far more significant than tariffs, far more significant than arbitrage, and far more significant than the Basel III. To me, it's very American-centric and perhaps is the beginning of a new monetary system where gold is reintroduced backing the treasuries, which have lost confidence and demand by the world's central banks. It's desperate times, I guess. call for desperate measures. And one last thing about the Kobesaki letter. That $9 trillion, that's due, I believe, next year. In 3 years, by 2028, we have $28 trillion in treasuries that are maturing, coming due. At $5 trillion a year in tax revenue, that's $15 trillion in 3 years. That's what we take in, and he wants to lower taxes. $15 trillion in revenue against $28 trillion in bonds coming due doesn't take into account what we're doing this year and the next two. We are way short, and so he wants to lower rates to make refinancing that $9 trillion due next year and the $28 trillion over the next three far more manageable. So whatever is happening, Mike, we are kind of at the gates of having to do something significant, unprecedented, and that really, I think, may surprise most people who are traditionalists in the financial sense of the word. I think all bets are off at this point, and I think there's something big in store for metals, much bigger than most people would think.
Andy Schectman is the proprietor of Miles Franklin. You can get your gold from him. Send an email, info@milesfranklin.com. Brother, I'm just listening to this. My producer is sitting over there bug-eyed, wide-eyed. I haven't heard this, and I don't think a lot of people have heard this. What you just laid out here to me sounds like that this could, if I were going to formulate a plan, it sounds like a plan. But, as you're talking, though, what occurs to me, what I'm hearing you say, is basically you have the CEO of all CEOs going like, okay, how do we fix this problem? Come in here, bring all you guys in here. I want all the gold guys. I want all the finance. Get in here. How do we fix this? Give me solutions. I want solutions. I want this done. And what you just laid out is a solution, if Nixon could undo all this by an executive order in 1971, and I don't know if you ever met him, but I met him and I interviewed him several times. 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, up in there. The gentleman's name was Louis Larriman. And he was one of the most, he wrote a book, The Return to the Gold Standard. It was the gold standard book. I mean, literally the gold standard of how to get back to the gold standard. And Louis, I asked him, I said, well, how would you do it? And he told me, Andy, what you just said about, well, you figure out what your assets are, you figure out what your debts are, you figure out what you want the value of the reserve to be, and then you divide it into how much we got. You set a date certain, and on this date, all the gold that you have that's worth $1,000, $1,200 at the time, he goes, on that day, it's worth $75. Now, he did it in reverse. You're talking about doing it forward, that you're increasing it. He was reducing the amount, I think. But it's the same math. It was the same principle. And I'm just blown away by this, that if this is what they're thinking, then why wouldn't he pull the trigger on it?
Well, and when you talk about potential, and a lot of people think he's trying to go after the European aristocrats that he believes are behind the color revolution we've had and behind any election interference, if there is any. He thinks they're behind it. And the LBMA is being bled dry. And the LBMA, the London Bullion Metals Association, is a 140-year-old exchange, the oldest on the planet for gold and silver. And they have a massively rehypothecated system where far more paper than there is gold. They're a T+1 exchange, meaning T is the trade day, +1 the next day, then the third day you get your gold. And all of this gold and silver that have been delivered, they've now said, due to a shortage of manpower and trucks, we're now at T+8 weeks. Sounds like a default to me. But listen to this. When you talk about how high this could potentially go and a short squeeze, they have 279 million ounces on paper of gold in London, of which only 36 million is available, meaning the other 240 million ounces belong to the world's ETFs, which now J.P. Morgan is primary custodian of, and the Bank of England. But that 36 million ounces of gold is standing behind 380 million in spot contract delivery contracts. So in other words, if everyone says, give me my gold, there's 10 times as much paper as there is gold, and you wonder why they've gone from T+1 day to T+8 weeks. They're freaking out. And the same thing is true in London, where 45% of silver, where 45% of all London silver has been delivered in the last 3 months. They're freaking out. This is an existential threat to some of the big European banks who are massively short in a naked capacity with not having the access to the metal to back delivery demands. This is what's different than anything I've ever seen, is you have all of the BRICS central banks standing for delivery over the last 3 years. I've been screaming about that. But now you have the United States doing it. That's a whole different thing. To expect to see the price of gold and silver exponentially increase due to a short squeeze for the first time in my career, I would say is overwhelmingly probable. This is something way outside the realm of normal. And I'm working out this morning on CNBC, and there's a ticker. Gold comes by. 40 swipes of the ticker went by before gold came back up again. And during those 40 swipes, Bitcoin and Bitcoin futures came up 7 times. The media is not telling us the significance of what's happening with gold. I see it clear as day. Been talking about it on all my podcasts. I will tell you, Mike, and all your listeners, if God is my witness, I think something really, really significant is coming. Trump understands it. And the fact that since November we've become a net importer of gold and copious amounts have come in, this is way, way, way outside of anything I've ever seen. This is an outlier with an exclamation point behind it to the nth degree.
Wow. Well, Andy, unfortunately, our time is up, and I like to squeeze these in to bite-sized little segments here. Talk about a great little podcast you and I just made. I can't wait to get this one out here. All right. Don't be a stranger. I need to have you on more often. I say that all the time.
Love it.
And thank you so much. Gosh, that's a lot for us to ponder. We're all sitting here chatting about this in our chat room and everything. People going like, wow. Andy Schectman, milesfranklin.com. Send him an email, info@milesfranklin.com. Brother, I can't wait to talk to you again, and we'll do it real soon.
It sounds good, Mike. You stay well, my man. Hope to talk again soon.
Yeah, we will. Absolutely. That is Andy Schectman with Miles Franklin. Folks, dude, you heard it live here on the Crusade Radio Network and the Mike Church Show. And I'm going to take this break to process this, and then I'll come back and tell you all about it.